You did this just for a bet? Her scream sliced through the music, and every head in the hall snapped toward the couple. He, a millionaire in a tailored suit, answered only with a thin smile, as if the very idea of explaining himself was beneath him. But in her eyes flared something he had not expected, cold determination. Guests thought it was a joke, a passing stunt, but in truth they were witnessing the beginning of a game in which only one could win. She ripped the ring from her finger and laid it on the table for everyone to see. You think you're laughing at me? Let's see who laughs last. A hush rolled through the hall, whispers rising like smoke. Several guests raised their phones, filming every second. His reputation balanced on a knife's edge, and he knew it. His friends in the corners exchanged glances, they knew more than the rest of the room. Yet even they hadn't expected her to have a move of her own. And in that instant it was clear, this story would not end quietly. The music died. The master of ceremonies froze mid-sentence. She stood taller, her voice steady though her hands trembled. Do you really think I didn't see it coming? That I would play your game blind? The silence deepened, broken only by the clinking of a fallen glass. He straightened his tie, still smirking, but the tension in his jaw betrayed him. Sit down, he muttered through clenched teeth, low enough for her but loud enough for the microphones to catch. You don't know what you're doing. I know exactly what I'm doing, she fired back. And they're all watching. Eyes turned, phones lifted higher, faces leaned in. What had begun as spectacle now felt like trial. The crowd was no longer celebrating, they were waiting for blood. A man from the far table whispered something to his neighbor and both looked away quickly when her gaze caught them. Her chest heaved. Even your friends know. You're not the one in control anymore. He leaned closer, his smile faltering for the first time. Careful, he hissed, you don't want to cross a line you can't return from. Her laugh was sharp, unsteady, but filled with defiance. That line vanished the moment you made me a bet. She took a step back, her heel striking the floor like a gavel. The crowd edged closer, sensing the unraveling of something far larger than a marriage vow. Every second felt like a countdown. Every word sharpened the blade between them. No one in that room could tell if the next moment would bring collapse, confession, or something neither side had prepared for. The silence pressed heavy until he pushed back his chair with a screech that cut through the tension. For the first time, he stood, towering above her, commanding the space the way he always did in boardrooms. Enough, he said, his voice steady but edged. This is not the place. His decision was clear, he would not retreat, not tonight, not in front of these people. But she didn't flinch. You made it the place the moment you turned me into a spectacle. Her words cracked like glass, scattering across the marble floor. The crowd gasped, leaning in, their eyes moving between them as if watching the final round of a fight. He looked at the ring lying on the table, its diamond catching the light, reflecting back at him like a mirror of everything he stood to lose. Then he did something no one expected, he picked it up, slid it into his pocket, and met her stare head-on. If you want a game, he said, we play by my rules. A murmur rippled across the hall. His friends shifted uneasily, not sure whether to intervene. For a moment, control seemed to tip back to him. Then, from the back of the room, a voice called out, tell them about the wager. All eyes turned. A young waiter, tray trembling in his hands, stood frozen, his face pale but his jaw set. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. Go on, she urged. Say it out loud. The millionaire's chest tightened. He had built empires on silencing voices, burying stories before they could surface. But this was different. Cameras were raised, the room was a jury, and he had seconds to choose. Ignore it, and the boy would speak. Confront it, and risk exposing more than anyone should hear. He took a step toward the waiter, slow and deliberate. You don't know what you're talking about, he said, voice lower now, like a warning. But the boy didn't move, his eyes locked on the bride. The bride raised her chin, her defiance burning brighter. "Your rules are slipping from your hands," she whispered. The room seemed to tilt, the music gone, the laughter erased. For the first time, the invincible millionaire realized he was no longer the hunter. The decision he had just made, to challenge, not retreat, had shifted the battlefield. But what came next would not be his alone to control. His waiter's voice quivered, but he didn't back down. Everyone in the kitchen heard it. The bet wasn't just about marrying her. It was about keeping her quiet afterward. The room erupted in murmurs, forks clattered on plates, and chairs scraped against the floor. The millionaire raised his hand, demanding silence. His face was calm, but his pulse thudded in his throat. "Enough gossip," he said. "This boy is confused, nothing more." Yet the crowd wasn't convinced. Every phone was pointed at him now, recording, spreading the story beyond these walls in real time. Then the doors at the far end opened. A woman in a dark suit entered, her steps sharp, her presence slicing through the chaos. She wasn't invited, he knew that instantly. His lawyer. No, worse, her lawyer. The bride's eyes flickered with recognition, and a wave of tension shot through him. She hadn't come here unprepared. "You brought backup," he said under his breath, his jaw tight. She didn't answer. Instead, the lawyer walked straight to the table, placing a folder between them. "If you won't explain," the lawyer said clearly, "this will." The guests gasped, leaning forward. His instinct screamed to grab the folder, to control it, but every move felt like a trap. He steadied himself. "You think papers scare me? Contracts bend. Power bends." His voice carried strength, but his hand brushed his pocket, feeling the weight of the ring, suddenly less like a trophy, more like a shackle. The bride's glare didn't waver. "This isn't about power. It's about truth." Her words hit harder than he expected. For the first time, he sensed the sympathy in the room shifting, to her. He forced himself to act. He stepped forward, took the folder, and opened it halfway, scanning the top page. His throat went dry. Bank transfers. Names. A wager inked in writing. His friends' signatures. He slammed it shut, his voice shaking with forced authority. Fake. All of it. But before anyone could react, the lawyer leaned closer. "Shall we let the media decide?" The crowd gasped again, voices rising, energy boiling over. He clenched his fists. Retreat meant humiliation. Attack meant risk. He had seconds. Then the bride's voice cut through the noise, cold and steady. "If you walk away tonight, you lose everything." And at that moment, before he could answer, the lights in the hall flickered, dimmed, and died, plunging the room into darkness. Gasps rippled through the room as the lights cut out, followed by the sound of shuffling feet and a single scream from the back. Phones lit up one by one, their screens casting ghostly glows across anxious faces. The bride's outline was visible in the dimness, steady, unshaken. He knew this blackout wasn't random, it felt orchestrated, another move in her game. "Stay calm," he commanded, his voice rising above the panic. For once, people listened. He seized the moment, stepping forward, reclaiming control with authority. "No one leaves," he added, and his confidence steadied the crowd. A small victory, they looked to him again, not her. But she struck back instantly. "You think darkness hides you? It only makes the truth louder." Her lawyer's phone flashlight snapped on, illuminating the folder still resting on the table. The crowd surged closer, trying to glimpse the pages. His heart pounded, he couldn't let them read. Acting fast, he snatched the folder, clutching it to his chest. "These lies won't decide my life," he barked. His boldness earned a murmur of approval, a flicker of doubt in their eyes about the paper's authenticity. Another brief gain. But she leaned closer, her voice cutting through the dark like a blade. Then why are your hands shaking? The sting hit deep. He glanced down and cursed, his grip betrayed him, the paper edges trembling in the light. The audience caught it, whispers spreading again, undoing the ground he'd just regained. Then came the sound that froze him. A click, sharp and deliberate. The waiter stood at the edge of the circle, phone in hand, camera pointed directly at him. If he won't explain, the boy said, the world will. The bride didn't stop him. She only folded her arms, letting silence sharpen the threat. The millionaire lunged forward, grabbing the phone before the boy could hit send. Gasps erupted. His hand closed around the device, and for a moment, he felt power flow back into him. But the screen lit up in his grip, revealing something he hadn't expected, not just the video, but a message thread. His name. His bet. His friends. The bride's voice, calm but deadly, you can break one phone. But how many copies do you think are already out there? The room seemed to shrink, pressure closing in. For the first time, he realized this wasn't just about a bet or a marriage. It was bigger. And as the lights flickered back on, the lawyer leaned across the table and said clearly enough for all to hear. You know this doesn't end here. The wager is only the beginning. The sudden return of the lights brought no relief, only sharper scrutiny. Dozens of eyes drilled into him, phone still raised, the folder clutched in his hands like contraband. He felt cornered. For a man who had built his life on control, the loss of it was unbearable. He could walk out. He had the power to end this circus, leave her to speak into an empty room. But his empire was built on reputation, and reputation was fragile. A single step toward the door would be remembered forever as defeat. He couldn't afford that, not now, not in front of them. So he made his choice. He set the folder down deliberately and looked straight into the cameras. You want answers? You'll have them, but not from rumors, and not from liars. His voice was iron, and for a moment, the crowd hushed. It was a gamble, claim the stage as his own. But before he could continue, the bride's lawyer reached for the folder. Instinctively, he slammed his hand down, stopping her. Gasps erupted. He stared her down, refusing to release it. This, he said, is nothing but a distraction. The bride leaned in, her voice barely above a whisper yet audible to all. If it's nothing, why are you fighting so hard to hide it? The sting of her words cut deeper than he expected. He saw the sympathy in the crowd shifting again, this time firmly to her side. His chest tightened. He thought of every deal, every late night clawing his way to the top, the sacrifices no one had seen. Did all of it come down to this? To being ridiculed like a fraud in front of strangers? For the first time that evening, his anger gave way to something else, fear. But fear birthed defiance. He pushed the folder across the table, his jaw set. Fine. Let them see. His friends in the corner stiffened, one of them shaking his head in alarm. He ignored it. This was his move. His risk. His fight. The lawyer opened the folder slowly, almost ceremoniously. Pages spread across the table, numbers, signatures, proof. Gasps rippled through the hall. Yet in that moment, something unexpected happened. A few guests frowned, exchanging uncertain looks. One of them even whispered, "It doesn't add up." His pulse raced. Could there be a flaw? A mistake? A weakness in her plan? For the first time all night, hope flickered in his chest. But before he could seize it, the bride reached for a page, lifting it high. This, she declared, is only the first piece. And as the words sank in, the doors at the back of the hall swung open again, revealing another figure stepping inside, carrying something that could change everything. The figure stepped into the hall, his arrival silencing the murmurs instantly. It was the waiter, the same boy who had dared speak of the wager earlier. But now he wasn't carrying a tray. In his hands was a small black case, clutched tightly, as though it weighed far more than it looked. The millionaire's chest tightened. He knew what it was, or at least what it could be. Proof. Evidence no one could spin. His instincts screamed to intercept it before it reached the table. The bride's lawyer gestured to the boy. "Bring it here." "No," the millionaire snapped, stepping forward. His voice boomed, commanding the room again. "This charade ends now." His bodyguard instincts from years of business battles kicked in. He would block it, take the risk himself. But the boy's voice was steady. "I won't give it to you. It belongs to everyone here." His eyes burned with the same defiance the bride had shown. The crowd leaned forward. Phones rose higher. The millionaire's throat felt dry. Every angle seemed against him, every gaze waiting for him to stumble. He reached for the case anyway, his fingers brushing its edge, only for the bride's hand to land firmly on top of his. Their eyes locked, the tension electric. "You can't keep hiding," she said. His jaw clenched. He pulled his hand back slowly, the effort visible. The man who once never flinched was trembling now. "If you open that," he whispered, "you destroy more than me. You'll regret it." For a flicker of a moment, doubt passed across her face. Just long enough for him to feel a shred of victory. But then the lawyer leaned close to her ear, whispering something he couldn't hear. Her expression hardened again. The boy set the case down on the table. Fingers reached for the latch, everyone in the hall leaned in, breath held, the promise of revelation hanging in the air. The millionaire's pulse thundered, his empire, his name, his very life's work dangled on the edge of exposure. Click. The latch snapped open. And just as the lid began to rise, one of his closest friends from the corner surged forward, slamming it shut with his palm. Gasps exploded across the hall. "Not here," the friend barked. "Not yet." The millionaire staggered back, relief and dread colliding in his chest. He was losing ground, losing strength, but the game was far from over. And now, it was no longer just him and her. The hall trembled with murmurs after his friend slammed the case shut. For a brief second, relief surged through the millionaire, someone was still on his side. But it vanished as quickly as it came. The friend didn't return to the corner. Instead, he turned, placing a steady hand on the case, and looked directly at the bride. "You'll get what you want," the friend said. His voice was clear, firm, undeniable. The millionaire froze. "What are you doing?" His words cracked with fury. This man had been with him through every deal, every late-night strategy. Loyalty was supposed to be ironclad. The friend didn't look back. "It's time the truth comes out." Gasps burst across the room. The crowd leaned in, hungry for the next revelation. It was betrayal, clean, sharp, merciless. His chest ached as though a blade had been driven straight through. He had lost control of the room, and now, even his closest allies were slipping from his grasp. He staggered, gripping the back of a chair to steady himself. For the first time, his strength looked human, fragile. The crowd saw it, and the whispers grew louder. Failure, fraud, liar, the words he could almost hear in their eyes. But then, an opening. He spotted it in the smallest of details, the page lying slightly askew at the top of the folder. He recognized the signature, his friend's. Sloppy, rushed, unlike the careful marks he'd made on 100 contracts before. A detail no one else noticed. A mistake. His heart thudded. There was a weakness here. If he could expose it, maybe, just maybe, he could shift the tide back. That flicker of hope lit something in his chest, enough to keep him standing. Enough to keep him fighting. He straightened, his voice hoarse but steady. "You want to call me a liar?" Then let's see how well your signatures hold up under the light. His friend stiffened, the first crack in his defiance. But before the moment could land, the doors to the hall slammed open once again. Uniformed officials entered, their presence sucking the air from the room. The leader spoke with cold authority. We've received reports. This gathering is under investigation. And suddenly, the battle between husband and wife was no longer theirs alone. The official's arrival shattered the fragile balance in the hall. Guests stepped back, phones lowering as authority replaced spectacle. The bride folded her arms, eyes fixed on him as though daring him to resist. For a moment, he felt the weight of every choice pressing down: fight, flee, or surrender. The lead officer spoke again. We've been informed of a wager, one tied directly to this marriage. Murmurs spread like wildfire. The very word, wager, ignited the tension that had been simmering since her first cry. Now it was out, undeniable, no longer whispers but accusation. His chest burned. He could deny it, as he always did, bury it under charm and bravado. But something inside him shifted. He was tired of running, of masking, of pretending that power alone could silence truth. And yet, surrendering now would mean collapse, not just for him but for everything he had built. He made his choice. Yes, he said, his voice steady, shocking even himself. There was a bet. Gasps rippled through the hall, phones shot back into the air, recording. The bride's face hardened, triumph in her eyes. But he raised a hand, halting the swell of judgment. But it wasn't what you think. The lawyer slammed a palm on the table. Then show them. Show everyone what it really was. His hands trembled as he reached for the folder again. He pulled out a single page, one he hadn't dared to reveal before. The crowd leaned in, breathless. This, he said, was never about humiliating her. It was about proving I could. He stopped, the words choking in his throat. Because there, at the bottom of the page, was something he hadn't seen before. A second signature. Not his. Not hers. Someone else's. His pulse roared in his ears. The bride caught the hesitation instantly. What is it? She demanded. He looked up, face pale, voice breaking. Someone else was part of this, from the beginning. The room exploded in shouts, questions, disbelief. But before he could name the signature, the lead officer seized the paper, holding it high. This changes everything, he said gravely. And then he turned, to reveal the name aloud. The officer held the paper high, his voice cutting through the roar of the hall. The signature belongs to Daniel Cross. The name hit like a thunderclap. Gasps erupted, heads turning toward the far corner where his longtime business partner stood, pale and rigid. The millionaire's stomach dropped. Daniel. The man who had built empires beside him, who had sworn loyalty through fire and storm. His ally, his shield. And now, his betrayer. The bride's smile curved slowly, satisfaction radiating. So it wasn't just a bet between men, she said. It was a conspiracy. Against me. Against everyone. Her words ignited the room. Guests shouted, some demanding answers, others recording every second as if history itself unfolded. He staggered, clutching the table for balance. All the air seemed ripped from his lungs. His empire was crumbling, his marriage mocked, his friends betraying him one by one. He was no longer the master of the room, but the man on trial. Daniel stepped forward, eyes cold. Don't look at me like that, he hissed. You knew the stakes. You just never thought she'd fight back. The betrayal was clean, final, undeniable. The millionaire's voice cracked, desperation leaking through the cracks of his pride. You used me. You dragged me into this. Daniel's smirk was cruel. No. You dragged yourself. You thought you could turn people into trophies. She proved you wrong. The crowd cheered her name, drowning his protests. He had never felt smaller, more exposed. His fortune meant nothing here. His power meant nothing here. He was alone. And yet, through the despair, he saw something. The second page beneath the one the officer held. A line of numbers, an account. Not his, not Daniel's. Another player entirely, hidden until now. Hope and horror collided in his chest. He lunged forward, seizing the page before anyone else could. The officer tried to stop him, but he gripped it tight, holding it aloft. Look! His voice thundered, ragged but defiant. This doesn't end with me. Or him. There's someone else. Bigger. Behind all of this. The room froze, silence crashing over the chaos. And then, a voice from the doorway, steady, commanding, unmistakable, spoke, "He's right." Everyone turned. The hall turned toward the doorway. A tall figure stepped forward, shoulders squared, voice cutting through the stunned silence. He's right. There was always someone else. It was the chairman of the investment board, the man who had quietly funded both the millionaire and Daniel for years. His presence alone shifted the room, he carried the weight of authority no one could ignore. The bride's eyes narrowed. So it was never just about me. The chairman's gaze swept the hall. It was about control. Testing loyalty. Seeing who could be bought, and who could not. His stare landed on the millionaire. And you failed the test the moment you turned love into a wager. Gasps echoed. The weight of the truth crushed him, yet in that crushing moment something strange happened, the shame he feared most no longer held him. For the first time in years, he wasn't hiding. He stepped forward, voice raw but steady. Yes. I failed. I made her a bet when I should have given her respect. I let greed poison every corner of my life. But not anymore. The crowd hushed. Even Daniel faltered, eyes narrowing. The millionaire turned to his bride, his voice breaking but true. I can't erase the wager. But I can choose who I am from this moment. You're stronger than I ever saw. Stronger than me. And I won't stand in your way again. Her hand trembled at her side. For a moment, the anger in her eyes softened. The lawyer leaned in, whispering, but she lifted her hand to silence him. Then prove it, she said quietly. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the ring he had hidden, not as a prize but as a weight. Slowly, deliberately, he set it back on the table. No bets. No power. Only choice. The hall was silent, breaths held, as the bride stared at the ring. Finally, she spoke, "Then my choice is freedom." She pushed the ring back toward him and stood tall, her voice rising, "You thought you could break me. Instead, you gave me the strength to break free." Applause burst like thunder, rolling through the hall. Guests rose to their feet, not for him, but for her. She walked forward, head high, every step a victory. The millionaire watched, shoulders heavy but strangely light inside. He had lost everything he thought mattered, yet gained the one thing he never expected, clarity. As she reached the doors, she turned once, meeting his eyes. "Thank you for the bet. It made me unstoppable." And then she was gone, leaving him in the echo of her triumph. The hall erupted, the story already racing to every screen outside those walls. But within him, something else ignited, a quiet vow that this fall would not be his end. Because sometimes losing everything is the only way to finally start over.